kid. This is the way.
We're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to the first big part of my stream, and that is my review for The Mandalorian, Season 3, Episode 3, Chapter 19, Part 1. I don't know what the hell this is. The numbering scheme for these episodes is all over the place. It's the latest episode of The Mandalorian. Chad just came out today. I've been a little delayed with my reviews beforehand, but I was like, oh shit, it's on Wednesday. Okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to review this, Chad. I'm not going to get into any spoilers, and I don't want to do that. Just kind of going to discuss my overall thoughts, what I like about this episode, what I dislike about this episode, kind of just in general, like what I think about the season so far, right? You know, and I talk about the season so far, I have to say, you know, the first two episodes, well, listen, they have been very entertaining. The money is on full display, Chad. The series has never looked better. They got some really fun set pieces, a nice mixture of CGI and practical effects. It's great. It's very entertaining in that way. But my biggest criticism, I think, of the season so far, it's just that it feels in a way like it's still spinning its wheels of like, okay, what's the central story? Because they kind of wrapped up one of the big things that I felt was, okay, this is going to be kind of the big thorough line for Mandalorian Season 3, or The Mandalorian. You know, Din Djarin's got to, you know, regain his honors, got to bathe in the pools of Mandalore, Chad, in the mines of Mandalore, and I got pretty much wrapped up, right? This episode definitely diverges and covers something which I honestly just didn't expect, and I assume is setting up the main story for this season. But again, I'm not exactly sure how that's all going to play out, especially based on what I've seen in this episode so far. And I want to get into more details on what the main plot of this episode is, because for the most part, it's not about Din Djarin. It's not about the Mandalorian. It's not about Bo-Katan, who we, played by, of course, Katie Sackhoff. Chat. She's returned. She's definitely got an expanded role for this season. But I did want to talk about the opening. I will say the opening, chat, it's a great opening. You know, we get a nice big starship battle between Bo-Katan and Din Djarin against some TIE interceptors, against the remnants of the Empire, chat. You know, it's very thrilling. It all looks great. You get it in space. You get it on the planet. You're cutting through all these different, ravines and going through the water and blasting each other, chat, and people flying around jetpacks. It gives you all the good Star Wars combat that you would want, chat, whether it be in a movie or whether it be in a TV show. Like, I'm looking at the scene that played out in the beginning of this episode. I'm like, yeah, this is cinema worthy. It is of that. It's on that level. It's of that quality, chat. And so the beginning of this episode is very, very good. I'm like, yeah, right into the action. You know, something big happens, and it's like, all right, we got to go to a new place now because something horrible's happened to someone's home. I'm like, okay, that's cool. That makes sense. Now that person's put in a weird position. Now they're a little uncomfortable based on what just occurred. So that's cool. I really like the opening of this episode. But then, chat, for the rest of the episode, pretty much, I believe this is the longest episode yet for season 3 of The Mandalorian. And the majority of screen time is not spent with the Mandalorians, not spent with Bo-Katan, it's not spent with, Baby Yoda, not spent with little Grogu, chat. Grogu hardly got any screen time this particular episode, which, again, I like Grogu, but I'm still kind of wondering why this character's still here. But, despite all that, no, actually, chat, this episode is mostly focused on a character you probably don't even remember, you don't even know his name, Dr. Pershing. Dr. Pershing, who is that Imperial doctor who was introduced in Season 1, Chad. He was also in Season 2. He's the cloner. He's the one that studied with the Camomeans, on the Camino, the gray head people, right? And they made the clone army and anything. Yeah, he's one of them who was studying cloning technology, Chad, and worked with Giancarlo Esposito's character, served Moff Gideon. The episode's mostly about him, and the actor, I believe, is Omid Abatahi. Is that how you say his name? Apologies if I'm messing up his name. I don't mean to. But he plays the character of Dr. Pershing. It was just very nebbish. very, very shy, nervous, anxious character, Chad. And he is very much shy, nervous, and anxious in this episode. Now, what I will say, I was curious, because this is what the thing I've been thinking about, because they mentioned it in other Star Wars materials before. But I was always curious, like, okay, how did the New Republic handle ex-Imperials? How did they process them? Did they imprison everybody? Did they have military tribunals? Did they have civil tribunals? Like, how do you, because the thing is, Jen, when you're dismantling an empire, that takes significant resources, that takes significant manpower, that takes numbers and money. So how do you do it? And how did you also attempt to reintegrate many of these Imperials into normal society and into various aspects of the New Republic? Its overall organizational structure. It's very similar in a way to like Operation Paperclip, chap, right? Where in which the United States basically took a whole bunch of Nazis, ex-Nazis, or really probably always would be Nazis, but Nazi engineers, Nazi scientists, the people that, work for the Third Reich, and incorporated them in the variety of programs in the United States. And that's what this episode is very much emulating, which is interesting and cool, right? I do like that. And we see a lot of this through the eyes of Dr. Pershing, who is discussing his research and how he has been rehabilitated. He's happy not to be working for the Empire, chat, and he wants to work with the New Republic. The thing is, like, everything about this episode so far, it's like, it's like the idea of it is very cool, right? And we see other characters in the past. Elia Kane, who is the comm officer, kind of like the number one and number two to Moff Gideon. She's in this, played by Katie O'Brien, which I feel like she's probably the standout in this episode. She definitely gets the most to do. She's the most interesting character, I would say, here. And she has interactions with Dr. Pershing. They seem to be, be rehabilitated and being taken care of by the New Republic, or basically given a community service, basically decommissioning Imperial technology and research, right? So much of this episode, like, I'm watching it and I'm like, oh wow, this is like Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni emulating Tony and Dan Gilroy's Andor series, which you guys know I absolutely love. That's probably my favorite Star Wars show of all time. Probably some of my favorite Star Wars live action content of all time, Chad. In terms of how it was written, I think it's some of the best written Star Wars since, Empire Strikes Back, or, if you're talking about maybe the books, the Thrawn trilogy, right? And I'm watching this, I'm like, oh, I see what you're doing. The problem is, I feel like they come up short each time they attempt to just emulate Andor. It's just something, there's just something about it, like the way in which some of the characters are interacting with, like, Dr. Pershing or Elia Kane, the situations, just the aesthetic. Like, when I think of, like, Andor's aesthetic, they managed to balance, like, the nitty-gritty frontier Star Wars, but they also showed that, like, the opulence on Coruscant, which we're mostly on Coruscant for most of this episode, right? The thing is, though, when I look at this Coruscant and how I look at, Coruscant in Andor, they feel very different. Like, this Coruscant, this episode, feels very much like the prequels. Where in Andor, Coruscant, it definitely, yes, there was some prequel influence, but it still felt more realistic. It felt a little more mundane, which, I thought was one of the best aspects of Andor. It's like, it really showed you, like, this is what life is like to live in Star Wars. And it's like, that's pretty cool. And even on Coruscant. And I don't know, it's just something about the how they use the volume and the green screen and just the way certain characters were acting here. They just so much reminded me of the prequels. Like, we get people like, oh, I have no idea what's going on. Oh, we under the Empire? Oh, we under the New Republic? I'm like, and then again, you have some of these aliens, and they all have, like, funny, goofy voices, and it was like, even though they're trying to talk about serious things, it kind of took me out of it. Honestly, the aesthetic of this episode reminded me a lot, of the prequels, definitely, but another movie that I felt like emulated the prequels in some of the worst ways, aesthetically and also tonally, despite the serious subject matter, was The Last Jedi. Like remember Canto Bight, like that scene Canto Bite, where it's like, oh yeah, this is the opulence of the galaxy. So much of Canto Bite was in this episode. I'm just like, I'm not really digging this. Even Dr. Pershing's like, I think I walked into the wrong movie. I think I'm in the wrong scene. He's already so naturally uncomfortable and anxious. So I was like, yeah, that was weird. And even when, listen, they straight up. All right, now listen. These shows were written around the same time as each other. Like, I don't think like Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni were trying to steal from. I don't think they're stealing from Andor. I feel like it's probably a coincidence, honestly. Because I know like Jon Favreau and Filoni, they were not involved in Andor in any capacity. Like their projects were. Though I know like Dave Filoni, his big project, of course, was Mandalorian. I know Jon Favreau was involved in Mandalorian, obviously, and I think some aspects of the Book of Boba Fett. And Obi-Wan Kenobi was, I forget the directors. That was her past project. But they have scenes that feel like they're trying to emulating Andor. All I'll say is there's an interrogation scene, with a piece of technology. I'm just like, this feels like such a half-assed version of what I saw in Andor. And it doesn't help that they have like, and listen, I love the Mon Calamarians, like Admiral Akbar species, like, blah, it's a trap and all that. But like when he's trying to explain the torture device, it's like, blah, it'll be fine, don't worry. And he's like, oh, it's like, I don't know. It just is like, yeah, this isn't really working for me. It's like they're trying to incorporate things that from Andor, but they're still trying to adhere to this kind of prequel-esque tone or something that's very reminiscent of something like The Last Jedi. So I feel like The Mandalorian can handle that type of material, but it just didn't work for here. And I think Dr. Pershing, like they tried to do a lot of legwork with this character. It's not the actor's fault, but they tried to introduce like a lot. Like, okay, we got to say like what this guy's background is. We have to explain the reasons why he's feeling regretful about his research, which is extraordinarily experimental, but he feels like despite the fact it was for the Empire, it can have some benefits for the new Republic, right? And I'm like, okay, it's a lot. That's why this episode I feel like is the longest episode so far, probably not only for Mandalorian, but for this season, probably for the entire series at this point. It's funny, so much of it's not focused on a Mandalorian. But it just, I don't think it just reaches the same heights as something like Andor, which introduced all this type of concept, like the political intrigue and the espionage and the spycraft and the conflicting alliances and morality, the kind of the grayness of the morality. It's like this is trying to do everything an Andor did, and I don't think it really achieved that. Again, I think Elia Kane, her the character played by Katie O'Brien, she gives the best performance. And she seems like a cool comedy character. This is most we've ever seen of her. I don't know even what her end game is in all this. It's very interesting. Like they kind of set something up, and I'm like, okay, where's this going? How's this working? So it was like, okay, we'll see. I'm interested to see how this is going to play into the story of the Mandalorian. They feel unrelated. Other than the fact that the Empire's like, we're fucking pissed off at you for, what you did in season 2, attacking Moff Gideon's starship and capturing him, right? We'll see. And then the episode pretty much ends with, Bo-Katan and Mando and Grogu going back to the conclave with the other Mandalorian shit, and that plays out how you'd expect it to play out, right? But yeah, that pretty much that 40 minutes in which we spend with Dr. Pershing and Elia Kane, it's fine. I think it's okay, but it doesn't. I imagine I can kind of grasp a sense of like what this eventually is going to lead to, but in its effort to do all the things that Andor did so well, I think it stumbles. Which is frustrating because Andor was so good. And I like The Mandalorian. I've always liked The Mandalorian. I like season 1, season 2. So certainly had my complaints for episodes, of course. But this is the one where it's like I feel like you're trying to be this type of Star Wars, and Andor succeeded across the board, and you're making a lot of missteps. You're not going as far as what that show did. It just feels like it's half measures. It's half measures, chap. So yeah, it's kind of a bit of a mixed bag and a bit disappointing. It just didn't feel like they had the right people for this episode. I just feel like the writers didn't do a good enough job selling what Andor succeeded so much at, chap. But that's just my overall opinions. I'm curious how other people feel about this episode. It's a very different episode compared to everything we've seen in The Mandalorian so far, and so I think people who prefer, the type of storytelling The Mandalorian has done in the past, Chad, the previous 2 episodes and the previous 2 seasons, this might come as a surprise to people, and maybe not exactly the best one, but that's my opinion, Chad. How did you guys feel about Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 3, Chapter 19, Part 7? Let me know. I hope everyone enjoyed the film review, and I want to take the time to tell you about the movie of the week, a film that I really enjoy and one that I think you will too. This week's movie is Scream, just in time for the release of Scream 6. Scream is directed by Wes Craven and written by Kevin Williamson. A year after the murder of her mother, a teenage girl is terrorized by a killer who targets the girl and her friends by using horror films as part of a deadly game. If anyone is interested in purchasing this fantastic film, please make use of the Amazon affiliate link below in the video description. Your subsequent purchase of the film not only earns me a helpful commission, but any purchase you may make after clicking on the link itself for 24 hours would help earn me additional commissions as well. Doesn't matter if it's a Blu-ray, a video game, a pair of socks, or a washing machine, everything within 24 hours of that click can really help the channel. So go ahead and check out the film, enjoy browsing and shopping.